Let's now bring in a new guest here on the U.S. Report, New York Post campaign reporter Amy Sikma, for an analysis on all the goings-on in the swing states that are set to decide this very crucial election. Amy, welcome to the U.S. Report. Now, before we start to dive into the state-by-state results, I want to talk about some of the national polls. We just had a poll dropped by the Cook Political Report, which shows that Vice President Kamala Harris has basically tied Donald Trump, or is in fact leading him in some battleground states, except for Nevada. This is quite a turnaround. Do you think that these polls are accurate?
Well, James, it's great to be on here. Thanks for having me. On the ground in the swing state, I would say I think those polls are relatively accurate for right now. What we're seeing in the aftermath of Harris taking over the presidential campaign and all of that support, all of that money that was not going to Biden, suddenly catching up with the Democratic Party.
So it's a money game and as well as, just the energy game. But something that I've been hearing a lot about, and you dive into these polls a lot, I want you to break this down for me here. One complaint I hear from an awful lot of people on the Trump side, people online, elsewhere, they say that a lot of the polls that we're seeing now are oversampling Democrats and appearing to favor Vice President Kamala Harris incorrectly or inaccurately in order to kind of create an idea that she's got more momentum than she does. But I don't know, is this really happening, or are these weighted in such a way that we don't actually have to worry about that?
Well, every poll has a margin of error. Every poll can oversample from time to time. I think what we look at is, what are the polls all saying? What's the average between the polls? And the polls are mostly sending the same message, which is that Harris has more than made up for the gap that Biden had with Trump. She has recovered it. She's recovered the enthusiasm. That's also what my fellow reporters and I are seeing on the ground as we attend these campaign rallies. And that, she really has gotten Democratic voters excited. Now, this is right now. And I think that's what a lot of people are saying. This is the picture right now. What's it going to look like going forward after the DNC? We don't know yet.
Yeah, no, of course. And I mean, polls are, of course, only a snapshot in time. But which swing states have we seen the biggest sudden swing back to the Democrats on? I mean, you're watching a bunch of them, but which are the ones that you're watching that you think are the most crucial, biggest swings where Trump and the Trump campaign need to be focusing some of their efforts?
Well, Arizona is a big one. Arizona is now a toss-up. And it's a place where Trump was a little bit ahead before. I would say my own state, Wisconsin, it's 10 electoral votes. It's smaller, but it's enough to get you over the edge, depending on your path to victory. Michigan is another important one, much higher population, more electoral votes. That is an important state right now. Pennsylvania, these are states that have shifted slightly in the aftermath of Biden stepping down, and which are becoming more important to hit the independent voters in those states.
Yeah, and how are the independents going? Let's break that down into the granular numbers. Which way are independents going? And particularly, I'm curious about female independent voters. Heard a lot of talk about reproductive rights, bodily autonomy, all of these issues that have suddenly revved up the media. Has that started to move those critical independents, or are they still split half and half?
I don't know if they're split exactly half and half. I would say that there was a lot of that. There's not a huge independent margin for female voters, for instance. A lot of them were in the Biden camp. They weren't happy about it, or they were going the path of a third party, RFK Jr., something like that. And a lot of those, they called them the double haters. They didn't like Biden. They didn't like Trump. A lot of them are moving into the Harris camp, but there's also split polling on that. Has Trump got an advantage with them, or has Harris? And that's still to be seen. I will say in Wisconsin, reproductive rights is what the Democratic Party is running on. Before Harris, they were sending their female surrogates here. Now, obviously, that has given them a boost in this state, I think, to a certain degree. But independent voters, moderate women, their top issues are the economy, immigration, crime, healthcare, rising prices. So they're not necessarily just shoo-ins for Harris.
Yeah. And I mean, just finally on that, what are you seeing on the ground? There's obviously an awful lot of enthusiasm for Harris, just as kind of a general idea. But is there concern among Harris people that the less we see of her actually speaking about actual issues and the more they just kind of make it about the vibe and avoiding the press, do you think that will hurt her in the long run?
I think that she thinks it will because we're seeing now that she is going to be redefining herself leading up to the DNC. So, Biden said there's no sunlight between his policies and Harris's policies, and she is going to try to remake that story a little bit, according to the reports coming out, and try to present herself as having a strong policy base that is more centrist than what she has been in the past.
Amy Sikma from the New York Post, we're going to have to leave it there for now. Thank you so much for coming on the U.S. Report.